Data governance was only about one thing, it was only about data quality. Today, data governance is about data quality, data privacy, data access security, data retention, data sharing, data loss prevention, and usage behavior. So all of these things. So data governance umbrella has broadened significantly to multiple governance disciplines. And every one of them is fundamentally dependent on what the user said, which is, I need conduct services. I have to be able to discover what data is out there, because if you don't even know where it is, you have no chance of governing it. Secondly, I have to classify it, to label it, to know what, how to govern it. Because data with a certain label will have these policies, and with another label they have another policy. So I have to have automatic classification. And once I've classified the data, then I have to be able to define policies. And there are policies and rules for data quality. There's also policies for privacy, there's policies for access security, there's policies for retention, there's policies for loss prevention. And there are dependencies, like privacy could detect loss prevention policies as well as access security policies. But the problem is there's a number of different data governance disciplines, and they all require you to define policy. But even if you did define all those policies and store them in one place like a data catalog, let's just define them. It hasn't enforced them. The big piece, it's the hardest piece of all, is how do you enforce it across a distributed data estate when you've got all of these disparate data stores across many different locations. And this is the problem, because there's no industry standard to hand a policy down to all of these other tools that are out there. So the only thing right now, given that the industry refuses to come up with a metadata standard, the only way I can see this happening is to see a repeat of what happened at the turn of the century, which was when we had client server. I mean, all these servers out there, nobody could manage them. And we saw the birth of distributed systems management, like Tivoli and stuff like that. Computer Associates came out with software where you had agents, software agents on all of those platforms. And then you did something at the console and it enforced it down on all of those underlying platforms. I think precisely the same thing is going to happen here. In the case of something like Microsoft, I would assume, I don't know the answer to this, maybe you could prefer more pushback on. But obviously they have their own databases of many different types, and they have policies that you can create in Purview, for example. And so obviously all of the databases could go to their own catalog and get the policy and therefore enforce it within Microsoft's own databases. Or what do you do if you've got Microsoft databases and other vendor databases like Oracle or anybody else for that matter? Are they going to go and connect, or are they going to go pull the policy, or are they going to push it? Because if you're going to push it, there's no standard, absolutely zero. So the only way I can see this happening is if we see the emergence of software agents, whose job it is to actually take a policy that could be stored centrally in a catalog and actually ensure that it's enforced in multiple underlying data stores. But if you to ask what's the hardest thing to do, it's the enforcement. Discovering the data, classifying it, creating the policies, etc. Absolutely all needs to be done 100% for every data governance discipline. But just defining the policy is not the end game. You have to enforce it, and that's the hard piece.
Change management.
It's not fully baked. I'll be honest. I don't think it's fully baked. I don't think anybody's got the answer to enforce this across all of those software as a service apps with all of those disparate kind of data stores yet. I don't think anyone's got all of those agents in place. But I do think what I am seeing is that this is gradually being built, release by release. You see these vendors turning up at my conference every year, and they've now got this piece built or that piece built, and it's gradually coming together. And in places where there's bridges out, we're still going to be reliant on administrators keying in the policy to the appropriate technology to make sure it's enforced. That's all I can tell you.